Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Keeping It Real on Purpose, where I'm your host, Edna White, your life purpose coach and author. This is the podcast for all around women, where we challenge your everyday thinking and limiting beliefs around life, relationships, and your business to help you live your life purposefully. Today on the show, we're excited to have none other than parent and wellness coach with a fresh perspective, parent coaching. We're talking about Laura Van Aken, if I said it right. Audience, you know me, you know what I do to names, but welcome, 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 Laura. Thank you so much for accepting.
Thank you, Edna. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. I think the work you do is fantastic.
Thank you so much. So we just want to welcome you, and we want you to share your expertise because we see that it has something to do with parenting. So that's always something that people always want to find something out about and always improve on. I know I do, and my kids are in their 40s, so I always want to improve. So let's start sharing. Give us some advice. I know that we're open for your advice and your candor in this whole subject. So we welcome you to Keeping It Real on Purpose. So tell me, how did the entrepreneurial bug bite you for this specific coaching niche?
Well, I adopted a little baby boy from South Korea back in 2003, and he proved to have quite a few attachment difficulties and some traumas that I was not aware of until he was a little bit older. And it presented an opportunity for me to really look at my parenting style, the new challenges that I had not expected. And I found myself looking inward to see what I could change about myself, because my little boy, my precious son, needed some very unique parenting. And it was I called it upside down parenting. And it was the hardest thing that I've ever done, and by far the most rewarding and worth every moment. But it changed me. It humbled me, and it made me challenge my own upbringing, the things that I believed and the things that I thought would work. I started at zero, and I had a lot of help. Not as much help as adoptive parents have now, but as I struggled to connect with my son and to help him through his challenges, I just became broken down and then built back up. So I always knew that I would, when I came out on the other side of this, my son is now 19, and he's still a work in progress, just like we all are. But I feel as though I have something to offer, if nothing more than compassion and, being able to teach resiliency and finding your own strengths and finding the strengths in your children and your family, and being able to capitalize on those so that life itself and all its challenges and all its struggles doesn't overcome and take over. So I really enjoy supporting parents, because most parents all parents that I speak to want the best for their kids. They're just not sure how to do it. And we don't live in the world that we used to live in, that you and I grew up in.
Right.
It's a very different world. And parents have a lot of different challenges. And so I love to come alongside them and help them to understand that I would never judge. I'm not going to tell them exactly what to do. It's more helping them find what's going to work for them. I bring ideas, but I also strongly believe that the parent is the most knowledgeable person about their child or children. And so we talk a lot about, I help the parents to find their own strengths, something that comes organically from them. My intention is to work myself out of a job. That makes sense.
Yeah. So you teach parents to teach from their special place. Like, explain to me how you teach them to turn that, because sometimes we as parents, we get things from our parents, if that makes sense, and like, an audience, that I'm always talking about generational habits and generational patterns. So we bring those down there, and with all the best intentions, we think that we're supposed to be telling them, you got to get married, you got to grow up and get married and get the white picket fence with the 3 kids or 2.5 kids, however you want to be, that's what you got to have, but how do you teach them to parent organically? So what is one step that you would give them to teach organically?
One of the things I like to have parents do is to tell me what the ideal family would look like to them. Okay. If we lived in a perfect world and you were a perfect parent, your children were just wonderful and had no weaknesses, then what would life look like? Tell me about your perfect life, your perfect day, maybe your perfect week. And some parents are able to do that. Some parents are so overwhelmed that they can't really do that. And I say, okay, well then let's simplify it. Let's talk about a perfect afternoon. What would that look like? And starting with, first I discover what it is that they're struggling with. But then we talk about the dream. And so many of us are so overwhelmed that we can't dream anymore. Right. So we get a little bit of a vision for that. No matter how big or small, it doesn't matter. And then I talk to them about the details of that. And we start to develop a little bit of a design for how to make that happen. And I start by saying, what are the things that you're successful in? For example, I worked with a mom whose 3-year-old son just ruled the house when she came home from work. But I knew the type of work that she did. And I said, please tell me what you do at work and how do you solve challenges? And she told me, and I said, well, how can you use that very same skill in your household? So it's almost taking a whole fresh perspective.
That makes sense, yeah.
We have these, so it's how can you take that ability that you use in this one area, and let's talk about how we might use that somewhere else. Yeah. And we kind of move that around. I also help parents to take a look at the things in their childhood that they thought were great and those things that they thought were not so great. And we talk about how can we maybe repeat what we think is great. Maybe we want to look at, sometimes it's like, well, I'll never do that. But then they think, well, gosh, what do I exchange it with? Because I don't have ideas. So we look at those ideas and we try to reframe the way that they see their family. A lot of parents feel hopeless or overwhelmed. Okay. And I try to help them to feel a little more hopeful. We talk about the developmental stages of kids. What to expect at different ages. A lot of times we don't know. We don't know what to expect.
Absolutely.
Sometimes we're expecting a 2-year-old to think like an adult, and we're thinking, what is wrong with you? And we say these things in moments of stress. Not that, of course we don't think anything's wrong with our child, but, in moments of really bad stress, we'll be like, what is wrong with you? Why don't you know better? And then, so I help them to understand maybe the way their child might be thinking or feeling. We talk about children's emotions in addition to their developmental stages, and help them also to become in touch with their own feelings and what their child's behavior might be telling them about themselves. Being able to challenge that.
Okay, so that's a lot of information.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Because us being as parents, it's just a lot of information. And how do you start with just that one step? You got a parent who's overwhelmed. And when you were talking, and let me just tell you this, when you were talking, I got a vision of the nanny. No, not the nanny. She was the super nanny coming in, and doing all of that and retraining the parents and not the children. So I got a big picture of you.
Yes.
Is that's the way it looks?
I don't train the children. Yeah. I train the parents, and I really come alongside them. It is really collaborative.
Right.
I believe that, as I said, parents have many, many strengths, And so I bring my strengths, they bring theirs.
Right.
And we collaborate.
Right.
We talk about, well, what do you think would happen if we did this? And so a lot of times parents will say, well, I thought of doing that. And I'll say, all right, well, let's talk about that. Why do you think it might work? Why do you think it hasn't worked?
Right.
And it's very, very, it's more like putting my arm around them and saying, you know what? You're not doing this by yourself. You're not doing this by yourself.
Right.
I'm with you. I'm coaching you. I'm not, because if I come in and I do the job for you, then I haven't empowered you at all.
Yeah, exactly.
It's more collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit different than Nanny 911 or the Super Nanny.
Super Nanny, a little different. So they don't. Well, I know the Super Nanny. She used to give them the information, and then now you try it, which I thought was good. And then she was kind of like hovering over a little bit. Yeah. But yeah, so yes. I get what you're saying. I love the concept. I do love the concept.
Yeah, I usually tell stories. I will tell a story about parenting my own son. Mm-hmm. I will tell a story about other parents with whom I've worked that have been successful, and they go, "Oh, I like that idea."
Right.
And I'll say, because it has to resonate with the parents sometimes.
Right.
It has to be like, I think I can do that. Mm-hmm. Because if a parent says, there is no way I can do that, then we're not going to go there right now.
Right.
We want to find maybe the low-hanging fruit. Well, I can do this, and help them to start small if they need to.
Right.
I also encourage self-care
and
emotional reflection, things like that. And I'm very... I'm not afraid to pass things off and say, you know what? Some parents come with a lot of childhood trauma, things like that. I can relate to that, but I am not a therapist, so I will tell them that is, and I'm very brutally honest with them because I want them to succeed with me.
Exactly.
That is not in my sphere. I have some ideas, but that is not my place. And so, a lot of parents will say, I already have a therapist, and they'll say, well, let's talk about what you talked about your therapist with, and let's bring that into action.
Right.
Yeah. It's about a lot of calming things, self-care, and being able to change our perspective. Mm-hmm. I'm overwhelmed, I can't do this, my kids are out of control, I'm a horrible parent, to, wait a minute, my kids aren't so bad.
Right.
These are the good things about my kids. I know that there are some good things going on in my home, and I would rather build on those
things.
And success begets success.
Right. Now, have you ever had the experience of someone comparing their children to someone else's children?
Yes.
And how did you maneuver that? How did you work that out? I want to hear this.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. I simply said, why is it important for your child to be like that child? Mm-hmm. And they say, well, because, I want this child. And I'll say, well, when we talked about the strengths of your child. Is your child strong in that area?
Right.
Is that something that is a natural gift? Would you like to be proud of your child, or would you,
Right.
I try to keep them in the present, and I try to say, without actually saying it, who cares what other people's kids are doing?
Right.
You're the parent of this child, and your child has awesomeness within himself or herself.
Right.
And we're going to work on that. The comparison game is a failing game. You'll lose every time.
Definitely.
Because if we're trying to rank ourselves and our kids against anybody, we're constantly ranking ourselves. We'll say, well, I'm not this type of parent, this horrible parent. But, but then the other people we compare ourselves to are so much better in our minds. Mm-hmm. And we assume that they just have this picture perfect life because we see it on Facebook. So it must be true. And they must not have any problems. And then we feel like failures. And we look at our children as failures.
Right. That's interesting.
So I discourage them from the comparison game. I say, let's bring out the best in your kids.
Okay.
Let's find out what they were created to do.
Okay. Now we know that the Super Nanny is always working with, younger children. Have you worked with a client worked with a client that has older children, maybe teens?
Yes.
Okay. Can you share a story about that?
Yes, I worked with someone who was trying to get a little bit closer to her teenage daughter, and they just had a somewhat volatile relationship, and so we talked a lot about, um, what their conversations were like, and I helped her to think about, what is it that's important? What is it that's important to your daughter?
Mm-hmm.
What lights her up? What is she really good at, and just what lights her up? And how can you encourage that, and how can you notice that, and celebrate that with your daughter? And how can you apologize for the things that you've done wrong? How quick are you to say, wow, I lost my temper,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm really sorry. I should have walked away sooner, and I shouldn't have yelled at you, and I'm sorry. And just doing that, can sometimes bring down a teenager's defenses.
Mm-hmm.
They're still teenagers. They're still trying to push away. The developmental stage is, I'm trying to become an adult, but I still feel like a child. But I also feel like an adult. I've got all these hormones raging. I have no idea what's going on in my relationships. Maybe I don't even know who I am. And mom wants me to fold the laundry. Or mom wants to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Dad wants to hang out with me like he did when I was a little kid.
Yeah.
And I am so self-focused right now,
Mm-hmm.
that I can't focus on anything but myself.
Right,
I'm a
right.
selfish person, but it's a self-focus. It's not a selfishness. And so again, the reframing of this developmental stage is really tough,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't mean that you can't nurture this relationship.
Right.
And, I think it goes a long way. I encourage this particular parent to make sure that she was listening,
Right.
without judgment. How much do you actually listen, and how much do you lecture? What does your face look like?
Mm-hmm.
Have you done some self-care before having a conversation so that you are calmer and more open?
Right.
Because most teenagers feel misunderstood. They feel judged. They feel lectured at.
Mm-hmm.
They feel invalidated.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just takes that parent to say, look, I don't know what it's like in your world.
Mm-hmm.
And I've made some mistakes. And I apologize. I love you. And I want to hear what life is like for you. Whatever you want to share, I will listen.
Right.
And
I
no
think,
matter what you think or how you feel, as they're sharing, you take that somewhere else and you deal with it privately.
Yeah, of
or
course.
with your spouse, with your therapist, with your prayer group, whatever.
Wherever. Take it where
in
you
that
gotta go.
moment, you are that child's, that teenager's ally.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Because
that's
if we don't know where their faulty thinking lies,
Right.
how can we ever address it?
Yeah.
We have to let them talk long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Now, I'm going to press you a little more about this parenting, because we're at the half mark, audience. I know that you're getting some good information and advice, but now I'm still going to keep her right where she is, okay? Because I like what she's saying. I like what my guest's saying today. So let's go to the part now. We're an adult now, okay? Have you ever had an adult to an adult child relationship or coaching client?
Yes.
Great. Tell us about that story. I'd love that.
Oh yeah, this story. There was a lot of brokenness in the parent's past.
Mm-hmm.
This parent did not, didn't even. And by the way, as a side note, I work with couples as well.
Okay.
And it's really important to me to get them on the same page. And a lot of times parents are not on the same page. So that's another thing that I do. I like to work with couples to help bring them together. But in this particular case, the husband and wife were not, they were still married, but not parenting together. So their adult children were somewhat estranged. And the mother was really hurting over this. But the mother had a lot of brokenness, and she said to me, I don't even know what it's like to have a healthy family. Mm-hmm. I never had one. I never figured it out. And now my daughters are, my children and son and daughters are somewhat estranged from me, and I want to connect with them. And so again, I went back to the whole teenage thing. Are you really listening to them? Are you trying to get from them, or are you open to learning what their life is about? Are you looking for opportunities to connect? And parenting is so selfless, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We love our children so much, and we want them to not hurt the way we've hurt,
Right.
struggle the way we've struggled. We want to prevent these things. And so we get into this lecturing, position, or ranting and raving sometimes, like, what were you thinking?
Right.
But isn't it nice to be able to say, okay, you made this decision. What were you thinking in that moment? Why did you make that decision?
Right.
Do you hear the difference? It's
Yeah.
huge.
Oh.
And so again, being humble, I think there's humility without self-degradation.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to say to your child, I messed up a lot when you were a kid. I own that. I'm working on that. I'm in therapy for that, whatever it is. I recognize, but I understand if you're angry. And if you want to tell me that you're angry, I would like to hear from you.
Right.
Your perspective of what happened in your childhood. I'm ready. Now, some parents aren't ready to hear that. And that's
Right.
when I encourage them that if they need therapy, I'm all about therapy.
Right.
I think do it. If there's something wrong with your stomach, you go to the doctor to find
Right.
out
You
why.
sure do. Sure do.
I think it's so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But a parent, at some point, we have to allow the person to express their perspective and their feelings, and we don't have to agree with everything.
Right.
We don't have to, but to zip our lips and open our ears and be willing to hear, just hear, and try, do deep breathing, do some self-care, meditation, prayer, whatever it is, before and after.
Right.
But be ready in that moment and say, I would like to hear. And then you thank them, and then you say, I love you. I would like to work on this with you. I'd like some time to think about what you've said. You're so important to me.
Right.
You are important to me. I have always loved you. And I want some time to reflect on this. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with me.
Right. That's good.
And that in itself can go such a long way
Mm-hmm.
to connecting with our kids.
Right. Yeah, no matter what age.
That's right.
No matter what age. Laura, this is so great for the audience. And audience, I know that you're getting some great advice. And on a number one subject, for me, in the generational habits and patterns is children, because what we do kind of passes down to them. And thank you, Laura, for letting us get to know about your business and how delicate and how important it is. And the things that I liked that you said was, saying sorry, apologizing, humility. We didn't learn those. Some of us didn't learn those parts in parented from our parents because they had to be so firm to kind of guide us to where we needed to go because of their lack. So, now hearing those words and putting them in the right places and perspectives is very important in parenting. And we have you to thank for that, Laura. Thank you so much. Now the tables are going to turn. And we want to know, the audience and I want to know about you personally. So, drum roll.
All right. Well, I've shared a little bit.
Yeah. So now here's a question now. Wait, the drum roll.
Yep. All right.
You ready? If you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Your past does not dictate your future. You can change, you can grow, and you can become the person that you want to be, and you can help others to do the same thing.
Why would you say that? Why would that be there for you?
For me.
Yes.
Because I believe that we come with so many, especially in adulthood, we come with so many feelings of failure, insecurity, or not being enough, or being way too much. And if we continue to live in that headspace, then we will not grow. But if we are willing to be open and to encourage ourselves and find the tools and the people that we need I believe that we can change ourselves, and by extension, we can change our world, our little corner of the world.
Yes, absolutely.
In a positive way.
Yes, that's great. That's great. What would you pick for your last meal?
Oh, homemade chocolate chip cookies and a big glass of milk. Yeah.
Would you want them warm or cold, or just
warm.
cooling or warm? Okay, all right. Okay.
Warm.
That sounds good. That is perfect. Audience, you hear that, right? You know, she's a sugar freak. You know that, right? Just sugar. Yes. Okay, so for your final thoughts on the best tips you can share with other women in business, what could you share with them if they want to, you know, proceed in business or a career such as yourself?
I would say you were created for greatness, and you have overcome so many things, and you have skills and talents that you're not even aware of yet, or maybe you're covered under a little bit of dust or a whole bunch of junk and garbage. But if you do the work to dig out of that and you apply yourself, you can do anything you want. And you need to find who you are really, who you were created to be, and purify that. And man, you or lady, excuse me, you can have a huge impact on the world. Go for it. You have gifts, bring them out.
That is great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of our show. I want to thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, donate, please share it with others, post it about your social media, and leave a rating or a review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on Facebook, EJW Coaching, Instagram, EJW Coaching, and on Twitter, EJW Coaching. Thanks again, Laura, for being here with us, and we'll all see you next time. And remember that I help women of color break generational curses, patterns, and habits to get the very best life ever. And we are saying goodbye.
Goodbye.